Hi there. I'm here to debunk some myths based on my gymnastics coaching background. Been involved with the sport since 1995. Holy crap. Actually, 94. And then 95 is when I started doing a little bit of coaching. And then when I was 20, I was like, yeah, competitive coaching all the way. And that experience was invaluable for being the yoga teacher that I am today, but not for the reasons you may think. So the first thing that people assume is that I'm a total hard ass because I was a gymnastics coach. And honestly, that's the part that I don't miss about being a coach is having a flock of children, some of which you have to teach some very important key values that they're not learning at home for some reason, and holding them accountable to behavior and this and that. So no, I'm not a hard ass, and I don't expect that you're going to do everything that I want to do in class and you have to do it the way I say. One of the most valuable things I learned as a gymnastics coach is that every body is different and that it's easy enough to take the child that is super talented and was born with a gymnastics body and develop them while the others fall by the wayside, or while you give them the same ways of learning skills and the same corrections and just thinking, oh, they're not trying hard enough, that's why they're not getting it, or whatever, they just don't have the talent. It's really, really easy to do that, and I've seen gyms do that, where they take the talented kids, they focus on them, and because they only need so many scores to win team events, and these kids win the individual events, and then it's all about winning, and it's all about the ego. For me, my challenge was I wanted every kid to be successful. And very often the most talented kids are the ones that they get things so easily that they almost lose interest sometimes. And it's the untalented kids that often have the most heart. It's not always true, but it does happen quite a bit in my experience. So I had to learn how to take multiple body types and analyze them. And it's something I'm very adept at now. Can see certain body types and say, well, that body's going to bend in the back easier. That body's going to be stronger. That one's probably going to have hamstring tightness. And then checking, oh, this kid has two sides of the body that are so different in strength or flexibility. And then working to make strength and mobility and flexibility symmetrical, as well as how do I have kid A, B, and C body types do the same skill. And everybody had to learn things a little bit differently. There's different physics involved for longer limbs, longer torsos, shorter limbs, shorter torsos, and the vast variety of things in between. So it's important for you to understand, taking that to the yoga practice, not all two bodies are the same, and hopefully I'm able to give you the tools to understand the way your body works in a way that's most holistic for you. So that's number one. Number two, speaking of bodies, the back, low back, has always been a little thing of mine, and I think it's important that we're keeping the low back safe. And in gymnastics, you tend to see the curvy, extra curvy low back, but sometimes you see those kids where you have a gym that focuses a lot on the strength portion and in general just the hollow body position encourages almost a pushing out of the lumbar curve. So you do get some of the extremes there where kids have too much, not enough, and you can almost pinpoint their problems with their knees and their back, and very often their shoulders too, based on what their low back looks like. So limbering, from a very, very early time in my career, I knew had to be limited based on information that I got from older coaches who used to coach based on ego and started coaching based on the fact that these kids had to, when they were done with the sport, be functional and whole people that weren't injured for the rest of their lives because of a few years in gymnastics because they were feeding a coach's ego to get a certain skill or make a certain level or win. So that was important. Limbering had been shown no bueno to do a lot of, and it's not necessary. You don't have a ton of limbering that needs to be done, and it certainly doesn't have to be held and repeated multiple times. On top of that, there was also a lot of work with asymmetry in the sport. And although it's not as bad as some sports, there's still plenty of asymmetry. Anything that's asymmetrical is done primarily on the dominant side. And from early on, I incorporated at least once a week, we worked skills on both sides of the body. And the kids hated it at first. But if you did it from early on and you had the kick in the handstands and cartwheels and round-offs and things that became easy for them and were pretty safe to do on the other side of the body, we did it. All the way up to back walkovers and front walkovers. I even taught twisting sometimes to each side. So that was important to me because there were lots of reports coming out in the gymnastics world that kids' bodies were growing asymmetrical. One hip hiked higher than the other and causing a whole host of issues in the whole sides of the body. So right from the beginning, I said, you know what, that makes sense. I don't want to do that to anyone, so we're going to fix that. And I did my part as best as I could. The lumbar spine thing too, teaching limbering from the upper body and as a lengthening skill and not as a crunching skill, super important. And even though in the beginning, some coaches and many of the kids and parents that didn't know better, and I don't know why they were putting in their 2 cents. Well, why won't you let my kid do a back walkover? They can do a back bend, and why can't they? And I would point out to them that it looked like their low back was bending like somebody folded a piece of paper, and that this was not what we wanted, and that their sacrum wasn't fully developed yet, and we didn't want to cause any like major issues in that low back area before they're fully developed. It's kind of a hard thing to do, but so that was really important. And then the other thing that I would say is the issue of squeeze your butt, tuck your butt under, suck in your belly. Those are things that I rarely ever used unless I felt like the kid had absolutely no freaking clue what I was saying and I had to use some extreme of language. But otherwise, I counted on other things. We talked about a kangaroo pouch in the stomach to help like lower the lower abdominal muscles and push down while the other part pulled up to help create the hollow shape rather than tucking the pelvis under. That was just an exaggeration that went too far one way. Or talking about different leg positions and how there should be some space. And of course, I did this in language kids could understand until they got older. So it was all about neutral. I've always been very much about neutral positions with some exceptions here and there, of course. You're going to stick your butt out in a dance move, sure, stick your butt out here and there. Absolutely. Maybe a little excess curve to make a shape that, you're doing in a floor routine or a beam routine. Yeah, that's not going to be a big deal. But otherwise, very, very vigilant on how the gymnast developed because it was important that they were not injured. Not just for them, in terms of that moment, so they could compete, not go to the doctors and be, on the sidelines all the time, but also so they could get out of the sport intact. Okay, that was pretty important. Other misconceptions are you are that strong or that flexible, or you have that low back curve, or you have your low back issues because you were a gymnast. So I spent 9 months as a gymnast. I don't think I have to say any more of that. That was not nearly enough time to get very strong or very flexible. My low back curve I've had since I was a wee kid. You can see pictures of me. Just what I thought you had to do to stand up straight was stick your chest forward and your butt back. I don't know why, but that's what I thought. And I was always told to stand up straight. And then when I did that, I was rewarded. So I thought that that's what you had to do. And then on top of that, I'm way stronger now than I was when I was a gymnast. Mentally, physically, yoga is more than fitness. It is way more than fitness. I think you can be mentally fit and emotionally fit too. And let's just say that the different philosophies around yoga, the texts and the all the stuff around it. I don't want to get into it too much, but it keeps me honest and it keeps me trying to work to be a more serene person that's like focused on the things that matter. And physically, that works too. It doesn't matter if I get this pose, if I'm tearing my hamstrings. No, it doesn't matter. I don't need to do that. So what I have now, sort of in terms of strength and flexibility in my body, actually has nothing to do with gymnastics. What actually killed me was in my shoulders was repetitive motion, constantly spotting, and always trying to do it on both sides of my body. But if I felt unstable or unsure, the kid was a little heavy, and when I say heavy, I mean like over 80 pounds, which isn't heavy for them, but heavy for me. I would use the right shoulder all the time, and that's what killed me. Spotting killed me. Being a bars coach for 6 years in a row, 7 years in a row, and spotting, that killed me. Not the actual process of gymnastics itself. And that's pretty much the extent of those misconceptions. Occasionally, I'll put something into class and they're like, oh, that kind of hurt. Is that because you used to do that in gymnastics? And it's like, no, why did it hurt your body? You know, it hurt you. Maybe it wasn't the best thing for you to do. I actually learned this from such and such yoga teacher, not from gymnastics. So, um, let's talk about why it bothered you, or maybe why I should teach it differently, or what I should take into consideration next time I offer it. Yeah, a lot of things get, and sometimes I actually don't want to tell people that I have a gymnastics background. I almost get kind of squeamish because then this whole host of stereotypes and ideas come into their head about what kind of yoga teacher I am and what I'm capable of. So, yeah, I still have a lot to learn. I'm certainly not where I want to be, and I probably never will be, and that's okay, because as a coach, I never was either. But I also knew at some point that I was actually quite a good coach, and I know that I always had more to learn, but darn it, those kids were pretty safe and very rarely injured, with the exception of acute injuries, and um, and when I started to find other coaches that felt the same as me, it was like this great validation, and they weren't always the most famous or the most popular coaches, but they had healthy kids. Not only were they healthy, but they were happy, and they could teach so many different ways of teaching one skill because they didn't come from that one way mentality, that you could learn so much from them. And much like my favorite teachers now, there was no one size fits all. There was no one universal right way to do every single thing for every single body. It just isn't how it works. So if there are any misconceptions that have been made about you, people have just thrown stereotypes at you and looked at you and made these swift judgments, share them with me, because I think you're more interesting than I am. Talking about me is actually a little weird sometimes, and I would like to hear your experiences so we can commiserate and share and, understand that when people make these judgments on us and we don't like it, that we have to use that in our everyday, like, okay, don't make a swift judgment, don't make a, snap idea of what's going on. And, it helps us also to become better people. And what it does is it makes me ask questions of people. I ask them about their background. I ask them about what I think they know and then what they really know. And 9 times out of 10, I am surprised. And because of that, I hope that everybody else is a little bit surprised about what I am telling you. And maybe you learned something about me, and that's great. And if you didn't, I don't care. But please share your thoughts. I would love to see videos from other people. Short or long, I'll listen to them. Again, I find people fascinating. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.